IEP. Fellow travellers, I'd like to set the stage for the period I have honoured while preparing my rites of passage. The Dublin lockout in 1913, unemployment, poverty, stress, sickness, tenement housing. 1916, the Easter Rising Revolution. 1922, independence. 1937, the Catholic Church and State brought in our Constitution, which equal power and control. The family was the pivot of society and therefore protected by the Constitution. Sexual intercourse was prohibited outside of marriage. Contraception was denied to Catholics. As a result, young girls became pregnant. They were ostracised from society, shamed and exiled to Catholic-run institutions to do hard labour for their sins. They had no voice. They were forced to sign away all rights to their baby, and we as a society stood by and allowed this to happen. Pregnant women choosing or forced to marry did so on the side altar of the church at 6 a.m, again shamed by their community, whispered about, loose women. All of above was held and projected by society onto those who bore the shame. In Catholic families, husbands had conjugal rights. This was interpreted as the right to have intercourse whenever he wished. The vow to love, honour and obey was a key part of the marriage ceremony. Women who for health reasons needed to abstain were required to seek dispensation from their priest. As a result, there were many large Catholic families. I was the youngest of 12, born to a mother who was worn out, getting old and had too much work to do. She was a good woman, attended Mass and Communion daily. She was full of compassion for humanity. My dad was a quiet, gentle man. My mother worked in the home and served my father, while my siblings looked after me. I had a sense of love and belonging. Life was full. I loved the smell of freshly polished mahogany furniture. I loved beautiful things. I loved my home. At the age of 7, I was raped by my neighbour's son in full view of my little friends. The power of evil. I never played again with those children. I could not stop vomiting and shaking. My parents didn't know how to look after me. They had no emotional intelligence. They were stunned, and I was left alone in my silent world, disconnected from reality. Following the death of her child, my aunt in Belfast, who was Protestant, took care of me. I felt abandoned by my family and experienced the full impact of insecurity for the first time in my life. My new family now consisted of my aunt and uncle and 2 other children. The big house was silent, unlike my own home, with both parents focused on the family. My uncle worked as an engineer in the shipyard. I felt watched over and protected. Nature slowly crept into my senses and brought me back into the world of reality. The silver light of the sun on the water in the stream, the tadpoles underneath the water, the leeches, the marshmallow damp grass on my bare feet, the smells, the touch of the wind. The sickness was over. I came back into my heart. I could love again. John Bradshaw refers to child sexual abuse as murder of the soul. My abuser's parents committed him to a mental institution for his protection, thus rendering him unaccountable for his multiple crimes of child sexual abuse. While I lived my life carrying the trauma, fear and disassociation, this man went on to abuse many other children, and yet the courts of justice deemed him non-compos mentis. All for evil needs to grow is for good people to do nothing. My rite of passage to Holy Communion was spoiled. I questioned, how can you make your communion when you're impure? Life is very difficult when you're disconnected from yourself. You've no signposts. Meanwhile, physical, emotional and sexual abuse was experienced in the school and institutions. Children were victims of heinous crimes, executed by those they were entrusted to. This abuse was now coming from within the system. Children suffered at the hands of authority, and there was nowhere to go with the brutality around it. Many parents lived by their church teachings. Where did the pain go? It changed those children, now the grandparents. Conform and forget you ever conformed. Survive by whatever means you can, even if it means cutting off emotions and controlling life so that you'll never have to experience the horror of the wounding, the soul loss, the fear, conformity, bowing down, being less than, not good enough, held in our collective and individual psyches. The film Mea Maxima Culpa, Silence in the House of God, directed by Alex Gibney, is worth viewing. It explores the abusive power of the Catholic Church. This last piece is called Vulnerability. Society does not champion truth and vulnerability. It upholds wealth, power and status. Our children will benefit from the acceptance and integration of our vulnerability. The casting of light on the shadow will reveal what is hidden and in need of healing. The HSE National Statistics for 2012 indicate 9,500 people presented with suicide ideation and intent, a percentage successfully completed. The loss of a relationship, death, separation, childbirth, unemployment, financial difficulty can take us to the edge of life and sanity. I believe successfully negotiating this core wound resulting from our first relationship is necessary for the healing of the nation. As a rite of passage, let us cross the threshold of insecurity. When we can sit with ourselves, we can sit with another. The soul longs for deeper connection, and everyday love matters.
Hear, hear.